Hello, in this video I'm going to talk about how these three cars have very nearly killed me in the past fortnight, and how this one may have saved my soul. So I don't think there are going to be too many people watching this channel who don't already kind of know me and the gaggle of cars I surround myself in. Also, sorry about the wind. There's nothing I can do. It's there's a storm. It's not here, but we got the kind of like the aftermath of it. So basically, yeah, I have well, in the household we have 1, 2, 3, van, TVR, no, C6, BX, 2 Xantia, 3 Xantia, no, I'm not counting the tractor. It's not really.
79 Schecter, 78 Andretti, 77 Lauda, 76 Hunt, 75 Lauda.
10. We've got 10 cars. 10 cars in the household, right? Now, I'm not going to go about and blow my own trumpet on this, and or that of my wife, because she hasn't got one. But no, basically, we have a selection of cars. Bangonomics? No, they're not really Bangonomics, because we do look after them, but they're all old. Own them all outright. There's no loans, there's no finance, PCP. I don't have to put a deposit and take it back to a dealer after 3 years and all that rubbish. You know, they're all owned. But the first two that are on the road, the main two cars that serve our family of 5, are these. These are the dailies. These are the ones we rely on. The Saxo that's mentioned in previous videos and on Instagram and everything like that, that does get used also as a daily, but mainly just by her. This is a family car, this is my car. So what am I blabbing about with all these cars? We also have Hilda. Yeah, that's... Right, so let's go back to the beginning. The beginning of this story starts on the 9th of March, Rustival. The plan for Rustival, as you may or may not remember for me, was to take Hilda. I wanted to get Hilda on the road. Hilda has been off the road for a long time. Hilda is a 1973 Hillman Imp Deluxe, but it's not a standard one. It's got a Saxo VTR engine in the back of it. It is humongous fun. It's almost resto mod. Is it resto mod? Yeah, maybe it kind of is. It's got an ECU. You can do diagnostics on it. It has LEDs in the front. It's got, yeah, it's a build, right? Been off the road a long time. In 2022, in the summer, there was a Hillman Imp meet, an anniversary of some sort. It was at Goodwood. I didn't really go to the anniversary thing, but I'm going to stand this way because of the wind. I didn't really go to the anniversary thing, but I did want to do the track day at Goodwood. I did the track day at Goodwood. I got to my 5th lap and I broke the gearbox, and it's been off the road since. You saw the videos perhaps on this car recently, and that gearbox is now fixed and Hilda now works. And the plan was going to be to take Hilda to Rustival, only I didn't take Hilda to Rustival because anyone who went to Rustival will know I took that. To be honest, it gave me a much more comfortable drive, and when we're honest, this car and Hilda are at the opposite ends of my spectrum of comfortableness. This is made for refinement and cruising on motorways. Hilda is the opposite, very much not made for that. The problem is, every time I make a deadline with Hilda, well, it goes to shit, basically. It doesn't happen. I get pressure. I say, oh, I'm going to bring Hilda to this, and then I never do. So at the end of this little sequence of horrible events I'm going to take you through, the end goal was to take Hilda to the Hubnut Social, which was yesterday, at the place in Cirencester that I can never remember the name of. I want to say Gilks, but it's not, is it? Classic Motor Hub? Was it that one? Don't know. A lot of expensive cars there. There was an Isol Grifo there, though. That was lovely. Here's a picture of it. But yes, basically, as far as the C6 goes, Hilda didn't make it to Rustival. I went to Rustival instead. My wife took her Saxo. That was always the plan. It was going to be the Saxo and Hilda. Hilda didn't go. The Saxo went and the C6 filled in. The C6 did beautifully. I mean, to be honest, it's only Gaydon. It's not very far. Really, it should be a complete walk in the park for this car. But it was a walk in the park. The Saxo also. No problems at all. Straight there. Lovely. Not a gremlin. I can't help but think if I'd have taken Hilda, I might not have made it. So the C6 went to Rustival and it coped brilliantly, probably a lot better than this would have done. But when I got back from Rustival, I was annoyed. Why did this not make it to Rustival? And I had a thought, ooh, there's something I'm going to check. I did check the TDC sensor. I checked it was plugged in, and I thought, oh, maybe the wiring to it is damaged or something, or maybe the clearance at the pulley isn't quite right on the trigger wheel. It wasn't that. TDC sensor is from a Ford Focus Z-Tech. Nothing expensive, nothing exciting. Only this one is damaged because the alternator belt chewed through it. That's what was causing Hilda not to run. That was the lack of spark. The ECU could not see that the bottom end was rotating, so it wasn't firing the coil pack. Simple. Hilda now runs. Hilda's burst into life. Hilda was ready to go, and I thought, Hub Nut Social. I was going to take Hilda there. That was the plan, but I wasn't. So because I'd figured out that the TDC sensor was at fault, I threw myself into Hilda. Really went for it. Really, every little spare minute, every fibre of my brain went into getting this thing on the road. I thought, this is it. This is the time. This is when Hilda's going to work. And it was going quite well, if I'm honest. No, I'm not doing that. I'll take that back. This is our 2006 Ford S-Max 2.5 Turbo Titanium. It's a bit of a mouthful. This is the family car, as I mentioned. This car, on the 20th of March, failed the MOT, which is frustrating. It didn't fail on many things, but it did fail on 2 broken front coil springs, which I can't help but think have been like that a very long time. And the rear handbrake cable on one side broke while on the brake tester, which is not ideal. Well, I suppose it's more ideal than it breaking when you're parked on a hill. So 2006 car, nearly 138,000 miles on it. Pretty sure those are the original front coil springs. I think we can cut it some slack. Not a massive problem. We'll put it to one side. There's a 10 working day retest window. I have the C6. We'll use the C6 as a family car until we need the S-Max back. It's not a massive problem, except the C6 has its MOT the next day. Didn't think that one through. Only it's not a problem, because the C6 went through first time of asking. No advisories. On the 21st of March, this thing straight through the MOT. Straight through. It didn't touch the sides. It didn't clip the rim. It went like a greased weasel straight through the MOT. Good girl. This car always has my back. This car always used to have my back. On the 30th of March 2024, this car stopped having my back. Observe. Not that. Not that either. That. I don't know what the problem is, if I'm honest. There are a number of things that could be. I do have this. Now, this is not a promotional video. I will be doing a promotional video because I think this is actually a very, very, very good piece of kit that could be very useful to a lot of people. But this is a top-on top scan. I wanted to use this because on the 29th of March, the C6 started playing silly buggers. And basically, it's throwing up, well, it throws up more fault codes each time you scan it. So the first time it threw up 6, then it threw up 7, then it threw up 10, and now it's throwing up 13. And it's in limp mode. Great. Basically wouldn't go above 3,000 RPM. It would go, you could sit at 50 mile an hour, 60 mile an hour. It basically limits you to, I don't know what kind of throttle limitation it is, but it is minimal. And it's not happy. It could be an airflow meter, it could be a boost sensor, it could be an ECU fault, it could be wiring, it could be EGR, it could be all sorts. And I don't know what it is, and I don't know where to start. And I didn't have time because I was too busy trying to get the imp ready for the hub nut thing. Cheers, C6, that's helpful. So the C6 started playing up on the 29th. On the 31st, I came into work to try and sort out the S-Max's MOT faults. I'd waited a long time. We hadn't got on this straight away for 2 reasons. That's one. 2 reasons. Firstly, the ramp was tied up with customers' cars, which is a pain, but they do pay the bills. So I couldn't put this on the ramp to sort it. And when I could put it on the ramp to sort it, I couldn't find out what springs I needed, because the front springs on this car, if you go on the Ford's part catalogue, there are many, 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 many options depending on which coloured dots it has. Yeah, if you look at the aftermarket springs, there's like 1 part number or 2 part numbers, so Go figure. So I thought, let's get the genuine ones, right? One of the key things about the S-Max is the fact that it handles really well for a people carrier. It does handle very well for a people carrier. So let's not muck about with that. Let's get the genuine springs. So £160 each. Maybe not. So a cheap set of Napa springs later, they'd arrived along with a handbrake cable. We're ready to go. All I need to do is change the springs over. It should be pretty simple, shouldn't it? Simply renewing the front springs on any MPV isn't always straightforward. I did them on, I don't even remember, I changed the spring on past Picasso back when I had it. And well, that was actually quite easy, but it involved a little bit more faff than you might think. And that's very, well, the reason why is very simple. There's the front wheel. It's a McPherson strut arrangement, so there's a strut coming up. And that ends underneath the windscreen, which is a pain. And on this car, it means you've got to remove the windscreen wiper motors on both sides to get the front suspension out. It took me an hour to get that wiper arm off because it was rusted on. That was good fun, but that was the most fun part of it, genuinely. In order to explain why it wasn't very fun, I need to show you a Citroen BX. Genuinely, I know that sounds really weird, but I do. This is a Citroen BX, rather nice Citroen BX. It's a Citroen BX 14RE, which is the choice of champions for BXs, but we're not here to look at the BX-ness of this BX. We're here, or to see how many times I can say BX, we're here to look at the suspension arrangement, which is weird when you're trying to talk about a Ford S-Max, because as any fool know, this thing has hydropneumatic suspension, not hydroelastic, and the S-Max has conventional prehistoric suspension, but that's irrelevant. The bit we're looking at is the McPherson strut design, which they both have, and that's this. It means that you have a strut here, which on this car is a hydraulic cylinder with a sphere up there, but on the S-Max it's a coil spring and a shock absorber. It's the same, you know, that's the method of springing and damping is that. Basically you have the springing, damping strut mechanism here, which connects down here into this knuckle. This is a steering knuckle to which the wheel hub is pressed in, the brake caliper's bolted on, the track rod end goes to it, everything like that. On most cars, when you want to change the shock absorbers, there is a pinch bolt in there which clamps the steering knuckle to the bottom of the strut, and it is the case on the BX. The BX is a cheat code, really, because if you want to get the strut out of that, all you got to do is lower the suspension down like this, and then jack the car up so the wheel and the knuckle drops, undo the pinch bolt, and you can pull the strut out of the knuckle. It's a cheat. I mean, that is like ridiculously easy. Most cars it's a bit harder because you can't do that with the strut because the spring's still in there. But on most cars, you can pull it out of the way, get that to clear, and away you go. I worked on a Saab 9.3 this week, a brother of Auto Shenanigans fame. In fact, on the 9.3 there was an extra stroke of genius because I don't know if it's a Vauxhall thing or probably more likely a Saab thing, but I could be wrong. Could be doing Vauxhall a great disservice there, but basically on those, which is again a kind of common design, the strut doesn't go into the knuckle. It has a yoke fitting on the back, so it's basically got a yoke and the knuckle goes in there and then two bolts go through, clamps it all together, lovely, lovely. So when you take the bolts out, you can just pull the strut off the back, undo the bolts that hold it in at the top and withdraw it. Easy. In fact, the Saab, even better, because the nuts are locking nuts, either Nylock or UPnDOWner type, to stop the whole thing spinning, the bolts in the Saab are splined. Gee, I need to get another Saab, don't I? I wish they drove well. If they drove well, I'd have one. Like, all the time. But the last one I had, terrible to drive, but amazing to sit in. I have to try another one, maybe a 9.5. Anyway, so that's basically where you're at. Now, yeah, the simple way of doing it, going back to it, pinch bolt out, as it would be on a BX, pull the strut out or lever the knuckle down on the wishbone. Easy, easy. Unless you've got a Ford S-Max. No, because in a Ford S-Max, you take out the pinch bolt here, and I can't show any pictures, because if I had my phone in my hand at the time of doing it, I would have thrown it. You take out the pinch bolt, you undo the bolts at the top, do what you want with them. You try and lever the whole thing down. You cannot lever it down far enough to get the strut out of the upright, or knuckle, as it actually is. I keep calling it an upright, it's a knuckle. You can't pull it down far enough to withdraw it. Believe me, I tried. You can't do it. So, you think, well, what do you have to do? Do you have to remove the whole strut in one go? Some cars, you don't remove the pinch bolt at all. In fact, on the Saxo, there is no pinch bolt. The strut and the knuckle down here are all part of the same thing. And on those cars, you don't replace the shock absorber or damper by replacing the strut. It's an insert that goes inside that tube. Different way of doing it. They're not that hard to do because to pop the bottom ball joint on those is quite easy. It's not a big deal. The S-Max, I must stay calm. I must stay calm. Right, so the S-Max, you can't get the strut out of the knuckle because there isn't enough clearance. What if you've already started and tried to do that? Well, you think, well, what's the easiest way to do it? So you're looking at the wishbones and things and you think, what's the easiest way around this? Why don't I try splitting the bottom ball joint of the knuckle from the wishbone and withdraw it all like it was a Saxo, which is a far superior car. No, what if you can't split the bottom ball joint because it is rusted to buggery? Cannot take it apart. So what should I do? Well, let's remove the wishbone, because if I undo the wishbone bolts, which are not captive, you have to have a spanner on the top, which is an arse to get to, which means you've got to take the arch liner out, which means the clips will break when you take it out, which means you don't have any clips the right size to put it back in, so you have to drill the holes in the wing to put the clips back in, to put the arch liner back in when you're finished, and then when you've drilled all the holes in the wing and everything like that, you find the clips you put in weren't long enough. Yeah, you basically pull the whole lot out, and basically what that means is when you pull the wishbone out, the bushes will ping into the position they want to sit. Which means when you try and put the whole thing back together with your strut that's about 11 million miles long that you can't withdraw from the knuckle, the bushes aren't at the right angle to go into the subframe. So that means you have to split the wishbone from the knuckle while it's off the car. So you can all put them back independently. All you're trying to do is change the coil spring. So you change the coil spring eventually. In fact, no, you don't just change the coil. Wait there. Oh no, you don't just change the coil spring. No, no, no. Absolutely not. You might think you would. No, 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 no. You see, when you go through the instructions for doing this job, they never mention you need an angle grinder to remove the spring in. One, two, three, four, five. No, hang on. Let's start again. There's too many to count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 pieces. Both the springs, which were originally 2 pieces, are now 8 pieces. Where's all the coloured dots? I just saw them. So that's to get the springs out. So then you think, right, okay, that's the way I had to do it. What a faff. You try to put it all back in, you can't put the wishbone back in because the bolts are not mounted in the way you think they'd be mounted. They're mounted vertically for something that moves vertically. You think the bolt would be mounted and the bush would be horizontally so that it pivots on it. No, it's just going to tear the bush. Screw it. So you can't put it all back in because it's not at the right angle. So what you do is you take it all back out again, you put the strut onto the knuckle as if it was a Saxo, and you cry that it's not a Saxo because that would be so much easier to do. You wouldn't have had to take the wiper arms off for a start. And then you've got to put the whole thing back together as a complete strut. You put the wishbone in first with nothing connected to it because it's the only way it will go in, because it's stupid. And then you've got to put the strut back in. And all you've got to do then is lower the bottom arm down to clear the ball joints. The ball joint simply sits in the knuckle and you can do it all back up. Only you can't do that because when you take it out, you realise that when you popped the ball joint, you made a hole in the gator. Not a problem. I have them here. Look, I have two upper ball joints for my C6 that I lovingly purchased for it. Proper quality ones. And I had to. One of them already had it nicked for the C6. The other one, I had to pinch the gator off it because it's the same size as the bottom gator on an S-Max. So, I replaced the gator. Already pretty annoyed at this point. This job that the book time for this is 2.8 hours both sides, and I'm over a day into it already. Then I go to put it all back together, and in levering the bottom arm down, I split the new gator. I put some glue on it and turned it round. So yeah, it's back together, put it that way. I go to lever it all back together again, and when you try and lever it, the arm, the wishbone, the ball joint of the wishbone this is the ball joint, this is the arm, because it is an arm, like this, and the strut is up here. So there's your hole, and the ball joint tries to go in at that angle, which doesn't work. You want to get it at this angle, but if you get it at this angle, it misses the hole, because you need to have the suspension all compressed so that it all lines up. But you can't compress it because it's not all back together. So eventually you have to engage the ball joint kinda into the hole, put a jack under it, jack it up, smack the hell out of it until it all finds itself and goes ka-dung back into place, and then put the bolt in and put it all back together, and then scream because you've got to do the other side. But the other side was worse. Can you believe the other side was worse? Why was the other side worse? I'll tell you why the other side was worse. All the same problems, only I didn't bother removing the wishbone from that because I thought, what is the point? I didn't remove the wishbone. I'd undone the pinch bolt just to see, just for a laugh, if it would do what a car is supposed to do, but it didn't, so I put it back together. I split the bottom ball joint. I watched a video on YouTube of a guy doing it on his driveway, and he did the bottom ball joint route, so I thought, all right, okay. So I split the bottom ball joint, and I got all that out, and I changed the spring in a million pieces, and I went to put it back together. It must be downhill, no, downhill, uphill. There's a gravity abnormality here. So I went to put it all back together, and I couldn't get the ball joint to line up again. It was exactly the same as the other side. Poor alignment, you had to go smacking the hell out of it, all this kind of thing. Only. Then, once I'd done all that and had the struts back in and the ball joints in place and everything like that, before I took it for the MOT, I actually changed the carbon canister at the back and the rear anti-roll bar bushes. They were nothing to do with the MOT, but I thought, I'm going to be belts and braces. I'm going to get this driving nice because they needed doing and I had the parts. And then I realised I had to put the wipers back on. Oh, right, okay. Not a problem. Bit of a pain. We'll put the wipers back on. To put the wipers back on, first you have to put the trim on. I put the trim on, fine. It just pushed on. It was a couple of clips here, and it just pushes into a rubber channel along the bottom of the windscreen. You can guess what happened. So the trim is back on, the struts are under here, you can't even see them, wiper arms, blah, blah, blah. So I was pushing the plastic trim back on, blah, 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 blah. Oh, I'm sorry, there must have been a grain of sand here. How? How? I mean, it's so, you can flex it. You can push it, you can flex it, right? So that it's not even sat properly against the body of the car, but I'm pretty sure that's the original screen. What an absolute bumhole, I thought. So I continued to put it together because I think it's out of the way for an MOT. It was only in for a retest. The only crack that's come off of it goes up here and is going away to back to the pillar. The swept area is way above that. So I'm thinking you can't actually, you probably could see that now from the driver's seat, but only just. So, I'll take it in like it is. I just need to get it MOT'd. I just need to get it MOT'd. I go round. I start it up. Yeah. So basically, when I've been faffing about down here, the minor amount of inconvenience I've put the drive shaft through, and it is minor, has dismantled the inner CV joint completely. So now I have an S-Max that failed an MOT on broken springs and a handbrake cable that I repaired and got the handbrake working, and now it has a smashed windscreen and doesn't drive anymore. And the MOT retest deadline is 2 days away. And the C6 is broken. I don't know what's wrong with it. But at least the imp is going well. No, not that as well. Now by this point it's April the 2nd and we've already now established that my C6 is broken, and the S-Max is no longer, well, basically no longer a car. It's a wheeled vessel. You have to push it. But the imp's going well. No, it's not. It starts off not too bad because on the 2nd of April, because of all the horrendous weather we've been having recently, I discovered the imp leaks quite badly. I commuted this car for 2 days. This car has covered around, I'm going to say 10 miles. I actually think it's more than that, but I think it might have done maybe 20 miles, something like that. Haven't filmed any of it because it was all done in the rush to Rustival. And then that didn't happen, and then the subsequent work has been in a rush to the Hub Nut Social, which didn't happen. Well, they both happened, but not in this car. So it leaked. It rained, it leaked. It leaks in through the quarter lights, both sides. It leaks in through the boot. It's horrendous. But that's not the biggest problem, because I noticed, although I'd got it running, and it was running very nicely, I made some changes to the cooling system, and initially was very, very happy with what I found. I have 2 coolant gauges on this car. One of them does the engine and one of them does the radiator, so I can see the difference between the two. And they were working beautifully. The engine was sitting, the thermostat opens on this at 89 degrees, and it was sitting at around that kind of mark, between 85 and 90, solid. The radiator would go up if the thermostat had opened, or come down if the thermostat had shut, as it does when you're moving along and there's a bit of airflow and everything like that. So it was really, really good. Working beautifully, except on the 2nd of April, I noticed that it was running hotter at the engine, but not the radiator. But not too much, and I thought, oh, maybe it's burped itself. It was a pig to bleed it in with the waterless coolant that this thing was running on, the Evans waterless coolant. So I made the decision that on the 3rd of April, I would take the waterless coolant out and put water-based coolant back in it, which is what I've done. Also, it's worth pointing out that because the C6 has a problem of mysterious origin and the S-Max no longer drives because I've managed to pull the NCV joint out of the chest cavity of our friend Colin Robinson, the only car I had to use was the Imp. I was actually banking on this car being usable because other than the Saxo, I didn't have any other cars on the road at the time. So that plan didn't really go well on the 3rd of April when it boiled over. And the heating problem that it had became much, much, much worse, to the point now where the radiator doesn't warm up at all and the engine just goes nuts. And before anyone says it, I changed the thermostat. I tried the thermostat, I changed it. The one I've put in it first was not actually the right thermostat, and I thought, well, maybe that's the problem. It was actually supposed to open a little bit earlier, and it was from a Vauxhall, but I put the proper thermostat in it, and no different at all. If anything, it's worse now that it's got water in than when it had the waterless coolant in. That's when I really started to doubt my life choices. Was Hilda seriously going to miss another event? And not only that, need the engine taken back out because some idiot has put a Saxo engine in the back of this car and you can't take the cylinder head off with the engine in place. So now we're at a point where I have 10 cars, or 8 cars are mine, 2 of them my wife's. We have 10 cars in the family, and the only one that works is a 24-year-old Saxo, 24-and-a-half-year-old Saxo. That is a laughable set of circumstances. And for the first time, I'm driving past dealerships, seeing a Dacia whatever, or a Hyundai i something, PCP, £130 a month. Is that why people do it? We've been really, really fortunate. We've been really lucky. Well, no, it's not lucky, I suppose. It's not just luck. I do the work. I can work on these cars myself. I have the facilities to do it. I can keep these things going. I can buy a C6 for 700 quid and then effectively spend a couple of grand on it and drive it to France. Most people couldn't do that because they don't have the facilities to do it. But when you end up in a position where, of your 10 cars, 9 of them don't work, how stupid is that? Why is the head gasket gone on this? I don't know. I genuinely don't know. No idea. I must have done something. That's the only thing I can think of. It had a new head gasket when the engine went in. It's done 2,500 miles. The only other possibility I can think of is that the Saxo that this engine was taken from might have had a head gasket failure and a head problem. And it's just taken 2,500 miles for it to manifest. There's all sorts of things it could be. So yeah, Hilda's not on the road anymore. I mean, it was briefly, but you didn't see it. I will do one test drive in this car because I'm going to have to take this car home. It's going to leave the garage. It's going to leave the workshop and go back to my garage at home and just get parked up, because I need to get out the car that's in that garage, and this has to go in there. So it's going to miss out on the summer again. And it's broken, so I can't sell it. I could break it for bits. Oh, I don't want to think about that. However, there is a saviour. An unlikely saviour. You wouldn't have thought it. So, if you watch the video I did where the Tractiva project officially came to an end, and if you haven't, well, more for you, because you won't know what this is, apart from the fact it's obviously a Citroen Xantia. This car came to the rescue because on the 3rd of April, the Imp had a problem, the S-Max has become immobile, the C6 has a problem of unknown origin. It's all going wrong. Everything's terrible. The 4th of April, I had an MOT slot booked. The 4th of April also being the deadline for the MOT on the S-Max, which is now passed. But I had an MOT slot booked for a customer's car at BX. And on the 3rd of April, the customer contacted me and said, I'm not really sure, because we knew that car was going to fail. It's rusty. The question is, how rusty is it? And is he going to bother getting it fixed or not? It's quite rusty. So he contacted me and said, very sorry, could you cancel that MOT for me? And I said yes. And then I thought, why don't I just throw the Activa in? I got this car last year in the summer 2023, and other than a brief appearance on the video that I was talking about with the Tractiva project coming to an end, this car has not turned a wheel. It was very mouldy, it was very mossy, it's just been sat there doing nothing. So it's not really in prime shape to be going in for an MOT, especially considering it has a coolant leak. The synchro is going on 2nd gear. The suspension top mounts are squeaky bum. The front right wasn't actually raising up. There were many problems with it. So I threw it in just to see what would happen. It only went through first time. No advisories. Clean through. Clean through. I mean, when I got there to pick it up, they went, God, you don't have to drive some old shit. And I thought, that's very rude. Especially as this has just gone through the MOT first time. So, MOT'd, tax cancelled on the C6, and put on this. It's half the price of the C6. So it's on the road. I spent the other night trying to sort out the front suspension. Now it sits level, except for when it's parked. When it parks, it falls over a little bit. I did give it a very brief wash, but I think it needs another one. There are many things it needs doing. I've done the spheres, not all of them, 4 of them. I've done 4 of them. It needs, well, 9 of the 10 doing really, and it already rides better than the C6, which is stupid, but there you go. Yeah, I filmed the rear spheres, so there is a little video spannering to be done on this car doing the rear spheres. Yeah, that's basically why there's not been many videos recently and why I've been crying a lot. They've all been a nightmare, except this one. This one drove to the Hub Nut Social yesterday. It has done, since the MOT, 240 miles. And other than a little creaking that has appeared at the front here, which I really hope it isn't the top mounts. Other than that, it's going well. You know, that there's no, yeah, it's not right, it's not perfect. The exhaust is still leaking, not enough to fail an MOT, thankfully, but it's still ticking away. Other than that, good go, well done. So I don't have any aircon anymore, and it's going to start heating up soon. But there you go. Right. I'm late for my psychiatrist. Oh no, I don't need to walk now, do I? I've got a car. And it works.